Welcome to Secular Soapbox. Tonight we are going to talk about religious trauma. It's a serious subject, so we have the right guest for the conversation. Get ready, folks. Hello. So, how is everyone tonight?
Awesome.
Fantastic.
I'd like to welcome Janice Selbie. She's a counselor and founder of Divorcing Religious, the Conference on Religious Trauma and Shameless Sexuality. So welcome, Janice.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. And I'd also like to welcome Baphometal for being my co-host for this evening.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. So, Janice, I see you have a bit of a background that reads like The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Could you tell us a bit about it and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, I can. And first, I'd like to say thank you for having me on. And I'm delighted to join you from the unceded territory of the Syilx people in the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia.
Nice.
And I grew up in this same valley, and my parents were Pentecostal, and they still are. And so you just know there was all kinds of craziness and shenanigans going on around our place with the speaking in tongues and anointing us with oil, with cooking oil, not motor oil. When we were
What kind of oil?
Yeah, just like canola. Canola oil was the holy oil in our family, I think. Probably olive oil would have been better. But anyway,
that's what we use.
Whatever it was. So there were those kinds of things going on, and church was always like pretty lively. Pentecostal churches are pretty lively, and there's like dancing and singing in the spirit and all this kind of stuff. So I thought church was pretty fun when I was a kid, but my home life wasn't really that fun because my dad is a narcissist and a fundamentalist. So when you combine those two things, it makes for a not really great growing up experience, because he was quite volatile. And we never really knew. We like walked on eggshells the whole time as kids. And anytime his car would pull up after work, and we would all like scatter to our bedrooms because we didn't want to be around him, didn't know what mood he'd be in. So we learned to follow the rules. And I became very good at following the rules. Huge rule follower. The kids in elementary school would pick on me because, of course, I was the tattletale and the whatever else. And so that's kind of what it was like growing up. And then I got married to a man introduced by my pastor. And of course, we went off to Bible college together. And while we were there, that's when we saw these women coming into town from the farms, and they all wore head coverings. Like their hair would be in a neat little bun underneath this covering. And I said to my husband at the time, I said, well, I didn't know we had Amish people in Canada. And he's like, no, they're not Amish. They're just Mennonite. And he says, it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. So go read the New Testament, because women didn't get excused from dressing that way. And I'm like, really? More rules. All right. More rules. So I was very excited. I got out my Bible, my concordance, and my lexicon, and I wanted to rightly divide the word of truth. And then that was it. I threw out all my pants and all my makeup and all my jewelry. Stopped wearing my wedding ring, and just grew my hair and started wearing a head covering and started homeschooling the children. So my world was shrinking. My husband at the time, he said, you're making your circle smaller and smaller. How small will you go? Apparently pretty small, because I felt really comfortable with all those rules until one day it all fell apart. And here I am, a heathen.
Here you are, a heathen.
Now, would you say that your upbringing, being that type of abusive and controlling household, kind of primed you for being able to accept those rules so without questioning, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. And I do feel like folks who grow up in fundamentalist environments, they are primed to accept authoritarian groups. And so we talk about people cult hopping. And so lots of people, they might leave a fundamentalist religious group, but then they might join a yoga cult or some other kind of cult because it feels comfortable. It's what they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You mentioned your dad being a narcissist and also being a pastor. I was thinking back to, sorry.
He was a fundamentalist. He wasn't a pastor. My husband was a pastor.
Oh, your husband was a pastor. Okay. Was your dad in leadership in any way or just?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And Jesus told my dad when I was about 5 that we were supposed to move to New York. Yes, New York State from British Columbia. And because he was going to become a preacher or an evangelist or something. So we all hopped in the station wagon in the 1970s and drove from Kelowna to New York. And then, but after a year, Jesus changed his mind and we could all go home. So we all came back.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
I find Jesus changes his mind a lot when things don't work out. And it's like, true, how did he not know that was going to happen? And yeah.
At different times in our house, Jesus approved of ABBA and then he didn't. Or Jesus approved of jazz and then he didn't. For some time, Jesus did approve of hockey, but no, then he didn't. So, who knows?
Okay, well, Jesus is obviously not very Canadian, so.
Apparently not.
Wow. Well, because what I was going to say is I know that a lot of, I was thinking back to with my Pentecostal church, a lot of the men who were in charge and leadership, they had very narcissistic qualities. And it's interesting how they tend to be the ones who get those leadership roles. And they are very controlling. So do you have any kind of expertise on that?
Well, I would say that growing up in Christian homes it can be dangerous for us because it primes us for predatory abuse. So we're told that we must forgive. And so predators and abusers will often weaponize forgiveness, and they'll do the horrible thing, and then they'll say, and you have to forgive me, and you have to forgive me, and then you're not supposed to gossip, and so they might say, don't tell anyone about this. And so those kind of the whole idea of submission and obedience, it really makes like a closed system, kind of a self-sealing system. And so people don't think that they can ask for help. And then I think of children who've been homeschooled in fundamentalist settings and they don't even ever encounter anyone outside. And so how are they supposed to ask for help?
Yeah.
Another thing that a lot of people overlook is that even a cult doesn't have to be necessarily outside of your home. It could also be in your home.
Yeah.
Right?
You can have a family cult. Yes. And a lot of my clients grew up in situations like that. I do also have clients who have come from very large cults, like say the Children of God or various yoga cults. They're all over the place, and there's a lot of scarring left on people. When things fell apart for me, when my faith fell apart, it was because a whole bunch of calamities hit our family in a very short span of time. We didn't even have time to recover. And, the last one just hit me so hard. I thought, that's it. I don't know anyone else who's tried as hard to be devoted to God, to live a godly life and follow the Bible. And to what? It was just a constant shitstorm, pardon me, but that's what it was. And I thought, no, God's not here. God might be somewhere else, but he's not in Christianity. And so then I started searching elsewhere. I spent a long time in the New Age camp. I grew my dreadlocks and tattoos and started smoking weed. My poor children, who were like in their early teens, they just must have got whiplash from watching me. Mom was wound tighter than a spring, and now she's like, "There's no rules. Do whatever you want." working.
I feel like that's kind of how I am feeling in a way. Just yeah. Oh my gosh, there's not a lot of rules, and I have small children, so I'm doing it very kind of like not so they can see everything, but
Right.
yeah.
I think you've been a lot more careful about how you've done it. I ended my my marriage, and it
Wow.
was my entire identity. I lost my whole identity, my worldview, and my community, and it was all I had ever known. Whereas
Mhm.
my husband at the time, he didn't come to religion until he was about 18 or 19.
Okay.
And so his identity had already developed apart from religion. Mine hadn't. And so it's like I just went through this second adolescence,
Yeah.
and I decided I was not going to deny myself anything. So it's amazing I didn't end up in jail or something.
Wow.
So I really, let myself go crazy for a good 2 or 3 years, trying out anything I wanted.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I came back to the middle, more or
Mm.
less, and kind of just calmed down at that point and went back to school to become a counselor. And that's when I discovered Dr. Marlene Winnell, and her book is Leaving the Fold,
Yeah.
and her website is journeyfree.org. And she's having a retreat. She's having a retreat in Cape Cod a little bit later this year. So I encourage people, if you're recovering from religion, to check out Marlene's retreat. And she was really helpful for me and became a mentor. And that's when I said to her, are we having conferences about religious trauma? And she says no. And me, never even having been to a conference, decided I was the perfect person to start hosting conferences.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
That's what I did.
Good for you. That's
Thank you.
incredible. I remember when you and I met at dinner this past summer, and you said, "Oh, Marlene and I are friends." I was totally taken aback because when I first started coming out of it and I was discovering all these people and all these resources, I somehow came across an article by Marlene on religious trauma syndrome. And I was reading it. And if anyone can find this article, just all you got to do is search Marlene Winnell or go to Journey Free. And she goes through religious trauma syndrome. And she's the one who coined this term in the 90s. And
That's amazing.
when I read everything she said it was a very long article, but within the first 2 or 3 paragraphs, I was like, oh my God, this is me. I thought that this was just my personality. I thought this was just the way that I was just naturally, but it explained so much because of the damage that religion does to you. And with growing up in it from the time you're a small child, the effects of it. So what are some of the most common issues that people struggle with after leaving religion, do you find in your clients?
I would say there's everything from physiological issues. So you may have trouble sleeping, your eating may be disordered, you may have mood dysregulation, you may have a lot of relationship problems. And then there are things like, struggling with the patriarchy. How do we disentangle ourselves when we've grown up? And of course, it's all around us in society too. And then, how can I trust myself? I believed that fully with all my heart for decades, like till I was 40. And then, when I was opening my eyes and finally realizing, I don't think there was a talking snake in a garden.
Right?
Then I was like, how did I believe that? That's crazy. And so then I wondered, how can I believe anything or anyone? So having to build up trust. There's a lot. Oh boy, if you leave the faith, but you're still married to a person who's entrenched in religion, and particularly if you're raising kids, it can just be so difficult. So those are some big things that come up.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that that's not something that I have to deal with. I feel like I'm probably one of the few, but I feel so sad for people who are dealing with that, because there are a lot, and my heart goes out to them, and I hope that they are able to get through that and find counselors or talk to someone like you to just walk through them or walk through that with them.
I have just a couple of ideas. If anybody watching the show is experiencing that, one thing that I encourage my clients to do when they leave religion is values clarification exercises. Okay. And this is helpful when we're rebuilding our identity post-religion. We're building our secular identity. So there are different resources, different places you can go on the internet to get values clarification exercises. And maybe my old value at the top of my list might have been obedience or submission or some horrible thing like that. Now my number one value is autonomy. So it's interesting to see how we've changed, and it can be helpful to have a partner also, do their own values list, because we need to shift when our beliefs aren't the same. We have to shift from focusing on shared beliefs to focusing on shared values, because it's probably true that we still have a lot of the same values. Just because you don't believe the same anymore, it doesn't mean that your marriage has to end. It does mean there's going to be a lot of work required, but I mean, marriage is a lot of work anyway.
Yeah, it is.
Do you have clients that in that situation that, a spouse is religious still and the other one is not?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have had lots of clients like that. It is really rough. And even for me and my ex-husband, who was the pastor, he did end up walking away from the faith, but with me, my deconversion, it was like holding a beach ball underwater for too long, all that pressure builds up, you take your hands off and it comes up and it splashes everywhere and it's so messy. That's what it was like for me, because I didn't know any other way. And his was more of a gradual kind of progression. And now our daughters are in their 20s and they're not religious at all. And he's not religious and I'm not religious. My new husband isn't religious. We're all just one big happy family.
Non-religious family.
That's right.
Wow. So go ahead, Beth.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to ask, what would you say are some of major red flags that could be easily identified for somebody who might be in a cult and they don't know it?
Yeah. Well, I do like to encourage people, anyone who's grown up in a fundamentalist or authoritarian family, familiarize yourself with Steve Hassan's BITE model, BITE, and it stands for behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions. And if you want to examine any potential groups or any groups that you're in light of, are they trying to control your behavior, the information, the thoughts, your emotions? So that's really helpful, the BITE model. And I mean, just generally, we want to be taking a look at, is it a very authoritarian type of group? Am I being discouraged from having friends or close connections with anyone outside the group? Is fear involved? Am I being motivated by fear? I mean, that's a huge one for religious people. And how do people still in the group talk about people who have left the group or people who've never joined the group? Are they kind about them? Are they neutral about them? Exactly. Are they practicing shunning? Because that's unfortunately another really big deal that a lot of people go through when they leave religion.
That's very true. And especially like you said, with like behavior that also includes, I realized that when I went through the BITE model, I thought, oh, well, some of these don't apply. Like, it wasn't like a sex cult or anything, but when it comes to purity culture in Christianity, they actually are controlling sex. So it does apply when it comes to that.
And that does happen in cults. It almost inevitably gets to the point where the leadership is trying to determine who has sex with whom and when. And often then they're even trying to split up spouses, trying to force them with other people, or put a wedge between parents and children. There's a terrifying, wonderful Netflix show on right now called Colonia Dignidad, about a Christian cult that arose in Germany after World War II. So picture all these people who had grown up part of Hitler Youth, right? Very used to authoritarianism. And this Christian guy comes along. He's like a Pied Piper, but he just happened to be a sadistic pedophile murderer kind of person. But he taught all these people, they were so engrossed in what he did. When he moved the whole cult from Germany to Chile, they followed right along. It was like thousands of people. It was a town within the state, and it got very dark. It's a really interesting show, but it's a great learning opportunity for how cults start.
Yeah, you mentioned that on your Twitter the other day, and I looked it up this morning, and I thought, okay, I'm definitely going to watch this because
it's not for faint-hearted.
No, you gave
I
a
want
very
to watch
good
that, and that explains why there's Nazis in South America.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's true. Yeah, they're definitely
part of it. Apparently, it sounds like that's one of the contributing factors, especially in Argentina and Chile. So, why do you think sexuality is such a big thing when it comes to the control of people in cults? Because I like you mentioned, seems like it's like a common denominator, right? Where they're trying to control who's having sex with who. Why do you think sexuality is one of those things that they're able to grab onto?
I think because it's so intimate, it's so personal, and it really is like a part of who we are. It's not all of who we are, of course, but it's part of it. And it in Christianity, at least, you're certainly not taught about consent, because it's a system where you're supposed to be an open book. It's like a cult of confession. If you're having bad thoughts or lustful thoughts, you're supposed to tell your pastor, your youth pastor, your care group, whatever the thing is. We're not allowed to have boundaries, and consent really is about boundaries. So that's another thing that I work with my clients on, is consent and sexual consent, because of course you're allowed to withdraw your consent at any time. And just the idea that as long as all parties are adult age, their age of consent or majority, and nobody's being hurt, who doesn't want to be hurt, you're allowed to take part. You're allowed to try these things. Life is this huge buffet table, and religious people want us to starve to death at the buffet table. But you could actually take a bite of everything. Yeah.
It's all you can eat.
Go back for seconds. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's like Golden Corral, but you're stuck in the back. Yeah.
No, it's
just kidding. Golden Corral is terrible.
It's interesting that it's good that you're talking about consent, because I was just saying this to my mom the other day. My son comes home from school, and I've never heard kids say the word consent as much as I hear my son say consent.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
like even his brother will like grab something from him, and he's like, "I didn't give you my consent," and I'm like,
"Whoa."
Okay. I'm like, when I was a child at his age, almost 11, the only time I ever heard that word was when you were getting a permission slip, like, oh, you need to get your parents to sign this consent form. That was the only time I ever heard the word consent. And so he's learning it in public school, and he's learning, okay, there's boundaries, and you need to ask my consent. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that
at a young age. That's amazing.
At a young age.
I love it.
And like he's saying it kind of in a joking way when his brother does something silly, but you know what? It's getting through. He's learning what it is, and
I have so much hope for for the current generations that are growing up now. And even when I look at my daughters who are in their 20s, and I see how accepting they are of everybody's sexuality, sexual preference, orientation, how people identify, it's just no big deal. at all to them.
And
They're
how
like,
it
hey,
should
that's
be.
cool, that's fine. Yes, yes. So I do feel, and then when you talk about your son speaking about consent, learning about consent, that just warms my heart. It's
Right?
wonderful. We are moving in the right direction.
We are. And it's just crazy how the church or Christianity or religion, they just want to keep us or keep society back in the dark ages. And when I look back to where I was sitting in the pews 2 years ago, I wish I would have got up when I heard the things that were being said, especially towards the LGBTQ plus community. I wish I would have got up and walked out then. But there was already those questions were arising in me, and in my brain, I was like, this just doesn't feel right. So here we are
And
now having these conversations. But
yes, and that's another. You asked me earlier about, are there certain things that that come up a lot in my practice for clients, and I would say sexuality is it's fairly frequent that it comes up, because when we were born into kind of a repressive system like that, we didn't have the opportunity to explore or think about, well, who am I attracted to, this type or that type or what? And a lot of people then come to me and they're wondering about opening their marriage. Are they, maybe they want to explore polyamory or swinging, or maybe they thought they were straight, but maybe they don't feel that way anymore. And
right.
and is that bad? And then we have to talk all about all that stuff. And it's very I think it's exhausting and scary for a lot of people, but it's also exciting because for the first time in their life, they're calling the shots. They get to try these things out, try these things on, decide what fits, what doesn't fit.
Yeah, I do find a lot of people in the deconstruction, deconversion community. I find that they tend to, what's the word? They are in the LGBTQ community as well. And I don't think it's like, oh, I want to try this now. It's just they're discovering, hey, I never got to experience this.
Yeah.
And because it was repressed.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that, for me, I'm just discovering there is no God. And that's great. But for someone else, it's like, yes, your hat.
It must be true. It's on a hat.
Yeah, exactly. But for other people, it goes even further than that, and it's wonderful for them. So,
and speaking about sexuality, I saw on your website the Shameless Sexuality Conference in October. That was last year. Are you holding it again this year?
Well, this year I'm getting ready for October, hosting the conference on religious trauma, at which time we will also have people speaking about sexuality, recovery from purity culture. In fact, some of the speakers from the Shameless Sexuality Conference will be coming back, and people can still buy the recordings, access to the recordings from Shameless Sexuality. It's very,
sexy
very
time,
popular.
Huh?
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Aww.
So it was a separate conference that has merged with this one? Is that what it was? Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
So did you bring swings and whips and stuff like that, or just kidding? I would imagine.
No, we did talk about some of those things. It was a really eye-opening, interesting educational conference.
We have a super chat over here from Aaron. What positive characteristics or values that developed in religion do you still hold? And what negative characteristics or values that developed in religion were the hardest to get rid of? Oh, that's a fantastic question. Thank you, Aaron, for that question.
Thank you for the super chat.
Those are really. Oh, you didn't have to take it down. I want to see. Okay. Okay. Positive characteristics or values. So I think I am a people person, and I was a people person then. But I don't know how many of these things actually were because of the religion or in spite of the religion. Like, I am a very compassionate person. I care about other people. And that was something that was important to my mother, that we be compassionate, that we be merciful, that we be kind. Like, when we weren't even allowed to say, shut up. in our house when we were growing up. We weren't allowed to say those sorts of things. We could only be encouraging to each other, but we also never learned how to argue constructively or talk about what we felt like and what we didn't feel like. So there are some good things still that I retain. Also music. I'm very musical and I love singing. And so that's something that I've brought along with me. And then things that have been harder for me, as much as I read books about evolution or watch shows about them, and I mean, even I have to watch like basic, like kindergarten shows about evolution. Young Earth creationism is so sticky in there. In my brain, it's like chewing gum. It's so tenacious. So I know that it's not true, but it's taking my feelings, my emotions longer to catch up. And I just have to be okay with that. I just have to be compassionate with myself, and it'll click for me whenever it clicks for me. And now I'm married to a scientist, so he's like Mr. Evolution, and I know that. But still, that one's taking me a little while to deal with. And of course, I miss some of my religious friends. I felt like I had a really tight-knit community. And I don't have interaction with those people anymore because I think they really just long for me to return to the fold. And it's possibly hard for them to accept me the way that I am.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Erin. If you want to bring up another question like that, there is a super chat down there. Yeah.
I wanted to say one thing before we get to Phil's question, but I totally understand what you were saying about the young Earth creationist and the evolution. I am trying to wrap my brain around it all. I find it fascinating, but it is very hard to comprehend. And I think it's because I didn't learn it properly when I was young. And if I did learn it, which my husband is always like, I'm pretty sure you would have been taught that in school. If I did learn it, I was telling myself, this isn't true. They're lying to you. Just do the work, hand it in. And then I would just block it out because I just thought they're lying. I don't need to know this. So
so you had that preconception already from your religion. Yeah.
Exactly. And when we're taught something with fear, like we receive it, say when we're children and our parents are indoctrinating us with religion, and it's also coming in with, and you better believe it or else you're going to be roasting in hell forever. So don't believe evolution. Don't believe, what the scientists tell you. Then we take that in and it's like got all kinds of psychological booby traps. It doesn't feel safe to start pulling on that string and have it unravel. So it just takes some time for us.
Yeah.
Well, don't you know it's evolution?
It is. I think I heard that. Absolutely. So Phil asked, how do you approach conversations with people who still hold beliefs that you have rejected? And what strategies do you use to maintain respectful dialogue? Oh, do you have any insight?
Well, I don't have a lot of those folks in my life. So sometimes they will approach me on social media, but it's rarely gracious or from a point of them being interested or wanting to learn. It tends to be quite aggressive.
Yep.
And I don't feel that I need to subject myself to that kind of energy because my job, I don't feel like my job is to go into the churches and be yanking people out of the pews. I picture myself, if you think of a little old tiny church in the old days and it had steps going down to the ground, and I'm outside at the bottom of the steps catching the person who's been thrown out of the church or who has stumbled out of the church. That's my demographic that I'm working with and wanting to help. So I don't have a lot of interaction. My mom I'm estranged from my dad, but my mom remains a believer, and she tries to understand the work that I do. She's in her 80s. And she says, well, you must work with Jehovah's Witnesses or some cult, she says, because my Jesus would never be traumatizing for anyone. And I'm thinking, lady, have you paid attention to any of your children? Like, have you seen what it was like? But try and be general and gentle, because she's so near the end of her life. I don't want her having an existential crisis right now. And in fact, if she goes into the hospital and wants me to hold her hand and sing a hymn with her, I would do that.
Exactly.
Because I love her and I want her to be comforted. And I'm not bothered by comforting her if that comforts her. But I know, I know what's true.
Yeah. Actually, my mom and I were just having this conversation today, saying that pretty much the exact same thing. If it was somebody like my grandmother who still believes, if she was asking us to pray with her, we would just say, sure, we're not going to.
I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's just unfortunate how religion gives a person this false sense of confidence and self-righteousness, and it gives them this empowerment that they have to push it out to other people and always be right. And unfortunately, that's a lot of what I have encountered through the social media that I've been on. That is the type of discourse that I've encountered. It hasn't been come and let's read together and whatever. No, it's like, you're going to hell, you need to repent, that kind of threat. It's all a threat. It's unfortunate, right? And it's hard, right? And also it's also hard for a person who hasn't encountered that kind of discrimination or trauma to relate to somebody who has. And for that reason, I see a lot of people dismissing, a person's experiences with trauma. And that's one of the things that just bothered me so much. It's a big pet peeve. It's like, oh, well, you were in the wrong church. Oh, you're mad at God. Or you just
want to sin.
You just want to sin.
Yeah.
Or you weren't a true Christian, which I think even me, I personally was never a Christian. But when I hear that, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me, that is so dismissive and also gaslighting somebody, right?
Yeah. Did you ever see that meme? I just love it. It makes me laugh every time. And it's like, when someone threatens me with hell, it has the same effect as a hippie threatening to punch me in my aura.
Oh no, but
I've seen a similar one about it's like telling me that if I don't believe in Santa Claus, I'm not getting presents.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it's so much deeper than the Santa Claus thing. And that's what people who have never believed, I hope if we have anyone watching or listening and they have never believed, and then someone tells them that they have just left a belief system, please, have your arms wide open, be compassionate for them, because don't say to them, oh, so what's the big deal? You just stopped believing in Santa Claus, because it was their whole life. It was their entire identity. The way that the world made sense to them was through that frame of religion. And when that dissolves away, it's a terrifying experience for a time. I mean, then it feels incredibly liberating, and it goes differently for different people. But let's be compassionate and welcoming to people who are questioning their beliefs.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I find that this community has been extremely welcoming, and because a lot of us have been, might not be exactly the same path, but in one way or another, we can relate to each other, and we know what the other person's going through. And I don't know, I've never met a community like this one, and I just love it. So people who are watching these shows, just reach out to if you see someone and you connect with someone online, my advice is just to reach out, send them a message, get involved in communities like Recovering from Religion, and like there's shows you can watch on YouTube like this one or other ones. There's live chats, and there's just so many ways that you can get connected, and you're not going to be doing this alone. So.
Right. And that reminds me of something else that I do hear from so many people who have left their church community or lost that religious community. And they are just aching with loneliness. And particular, then we had the pandemic on top of everything. And so people were isolated, and people are wondering, how do I build a new network, a safe secular network for myself? And I encourage people to look at volunteering. How can they volunteer even in their community? Now, you do have to be mindful that a lot of different people volunteer, and a lot of church people sometimes volunteer. They see it as a way of proselytizing, but there's also a lot of people who aren't religious who volunteer. Or maybe your community has, like mine, a local atheist, skeptics, and humanist association that you can get involved in and meet people that way.
Yeah. You mentioned the pandemic. I kind of have a two-part question with that. The first part is, did you notice an uptick in clients after the pandemic? Because I know that a lot of people left religion. I was one of them, because you're at home, you're isolated, you're kind of realizing, hey, what am I believing? And you're having more time to think. So that was one of them for me. So you can answer that question if you like. And then I have a part two to that question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and that's yes. So I feel my business really started to take off after 2016, when Donald Trump, sorry to say the name, came into office. And it was so horrifying for so many people that their churches were acting like he was a great Christian. And that really prompted a mass exodus of people emptying the pews, as they say. So I noticed a big uptick then. And then also, yes, as the pandemic wore on. And that's what happens when people manage to get time away from cults. If they are able to get off the cult campus or whatever for a week, because maybe something happened in their family, just being away from the constant blathering that goes on. And that's what people were experiencing during the pandemic. They didn't have to be so closely involved and interconnected all the time with church stuff. And a lot of them, whatever their background, JW, Mormon, evangelical, it's been their way to exit, sort of low key out of their group.
Right. Awesome. Thank you for answering that.
Social media, access to technology nowadays has had a really good impact on those who are deconstructing. They're able to connect to other people. So there's something good about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, believe it or not, TikTok. It's trash. Don't get it. But if you are on TikTok, there is actually a really good deconstructing community of peeps.
There is.
It's pretty awesome.
I was so nervous when I decided I'm going to look at this side of TikTok, because I had heard about the deconstruction side. And I was like, what's going to happen if I look at it? Is it going to happen to me? I kind of wanted to.
And it did.
And there's a lot of support, especially for ex-Mormons and ex-Jehovah's, I've noticed. There's a very strong community. So, I recommend that for those who, if you're deconstructing.
Like I said, the community is so strong in the deconstruction, deconversion. And that's the thing. When you're a Christian, you kind of stay within your Christian group. Like, if you're Reformed, you stay with the Reformed. If you're Pentecostal, you stay with the Pentecostal. The Mormons are over there. The Jehovah's Witnesses are over there, because you're not all Christian, But when you're in the deconversion, it's like, oh my gosh, we are all experiencing the exact same thing. Like, I'm following ex-Mormons, I'm ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, because we're all experiencing the exact same thing. And now it's like, hey, we're all a family now, whereas before we were all others. So
yes. Did you have a second part to that question?
I did.
Oh yeah, my bad.
That's totally fine. No, the second part of my question relating to the pandemic was, I also noticed a ton of conspiracy theories coming out of the pandemic, and noticing a lot with Christians. Do you have any kind of things you can touch on with that? Because that was sort of my exit out, was like, oh my God, all these Christians are following for conspiracy theories, and I don't want to be one of them. Is Christianity a conspiracy theory too? And,
Right.
So,
That's such a great question. And my thoughts on it are that to embrace religion, and we've particularly been talking about Christianity because that's our background,
Yeah.
it requires the willing suspension of disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
We have to just put logic and critical thinking aside so that we can accept miracles on faith, and all these ridiculous things that actually are not grounded in truth or reality at all. And once we are willing to do that, for one thing, suspend our disbelief or our critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
then the door is wide open for any other crazy thing that, as long as pastor endorses it or Christian radio host or whatever endorses it, well, then it must be true. And this is also how we, even things that aren't necessarily conspiracy theories, but charlatans that come in, or MLMs coming into the church, and we think, well, if it's in the church, so and so told me about it, it must be good. So I think that's how a lot of people are getting sucked into, otherwise good, decent people, and even some very intelligent people, but because they have suspended their critical thinking, they are falling down these rabbit holes, and it's really tragic. And especially when I think of QAnon, and I have a number of clients whose parents are involved in it, and it just shatters families. It just blows them apart. And the more the identity fuses with the ideology like that, the harder it is. You can't, when you start trying to talk to them about it, they take great offense. They take it as if you're criticizing them rather than what they believe. And that's how I was as a Christian. Of course, I wouldn't listen to anybody critiquing my beliefs. And so when we do have loved ones who seem to be trapped in a spiral of conspiracy theories or cultic thinking, if we can keep the door open for conversation, as long as our mental health is safe. So when we're talking with them, we want to be avoiding calling them names. How stupid, how could you believe that? That's so insane, that's ridiculous. But instead, maybe asking, oh, what was it? What video was it? Or who's the person who, kind of changed your mind? Because you didn't used to think that way. So help me understand. And then it's like your hands are like this instead of like this. And so then you feel somewhat safer. And then we might remind them of happy times we enjoyed together before the conspiracy theory, just to remind them that there was a time before and there can be a time again, and letting them know if they ever, if they ever are questioning or think they might want to leave, you are a safe person.
Yeah.
They can talk to you.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. It's painful. I really feel for anybody whose loved ones are caught up in extremism. It's really extremism, fundamentalism, being radicalized, and it can happen to any person. Don't believe it when people say, I would never fall for a cult. Well, no one joins a cult. People join a good thing. People join a great community. People join a super opportunity to make money or whatever. They don't
Herbalife.
say
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And we're vulnerable when we're in a time of life transition or life change. So maybe we've lost a job. Maybe we've lost a partner. Maybe we're a young person just going away to college, away from our family for the first time. And that's when cults, they dive right in and they begin with the love bombing. And then they're trying to isolate and get you really entrenched in the group, and get you so busy you don't have time to think about anything else. These are how cults operate.
Yeah. And
religions too, I think. I mean, in general, preying on the vulnerability of a person. And I find that so disgusting. That's why I hate religion so much. It's like my biggest thing, like, what the heck,
Especially people, this one drives me crazy. how churches are always hosting like recovery groups for people addicted to substances, and then
Yes.
they just swap one addiction for another, because
Yes.
it's possible to be addicted to religion, and that's exactly what happens. And I encourage my clients instead to explore SMART recovery, SMART recovery, because you don't have to think that there's a higher power outside of you. That gets rid of your power, that robs you of power. If you have the right tools, the right support, you do have the opportunity and the chance. You can move beyond your addiction.
Isn't like the first step of the 12-step program to admit that you can't do it on your own, right?
Yeah.
I don't like that. What's up with
It's
that?
empowering.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the opposite. Come on. We want to empower people,
Right.
It's all inside of you.
The one thing that the 12 steps do get right is they understand about the importance of group dynamics and group support. But there are also SMART recovery groups, and there are some secular AA groups, which that was new to me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I think they're few and far between,
Yeah.
but people just need to Google.
Yeah, Google is your friend.
Could you tell us a little bit about Divorcing Religion? That's your business, your company, your brand. So if you go to divorcing-religion.com, you will find Janice's information here. And I see you also have a podcast.
I do.
Yeah,
I have
this
the
is
Divorcing Religion podcast.
So cool.
Divorcing Religion podcast.
So how long have you been doing this, Divorcing Religion?
Well, I came up with the Divorcing Religion website. Well, I came up with my workshop, first of all, like a small group workshop that I run a few times a year. And then the website sprang up from that. So people can go to the website and find out about my background and my counseling, the things that I offer. And then I started hosting the Conference on Religious Trauma. So I started a YouTube channel called the Conference on Religious Trauma. And that's where I post the videos from my podcast, the Divorcing Religion podcast. And also that's where I post videos from prior conferences on religious trauma. So I'm really amassing a huge collection of religious trauma recovery videos and interviews on there. So I tell everybody to go there and to tell other people about it, counselors, therapists, social workers, because there's so much good information there. So thanks for asking.
Yes.
Also, another good resource through the organization Recovering from Religion, they also have the Secular Therapy Project, which is a huge registry of secular therapists that you can, contact and have a professional relationship and not be worried about them being associated with a particular, faith. When they say, I'm a Christian counselor. No, you're not. You know what I mean? Like,
Their Secular Therapy Project is wonderful. And I especially think for folks in the United States, because I think it's harder there to find a secular therapist. People aren't likely to advertise because they don't want to be, ostracized or whatever, or they don't want to be the target of hateful, whatever people might do. But go to the Secular Therapy Project, and I think you can search by state.
I think so. Yeah, there's a map and you click on it. It's great. Yeah. Oh, another great. Sorry, I'm just like.
You go for it. I love it.
There is a hotline, and it is by Recovering from Religion. It is 1-844 I Doubt It. That is their actual. That is their actual hotline, and they have 24 hours trained volunteers to talk to people about their deconstruction and doubting their beliefs. When someone needs support, they want to just talk to somebody. Yeah, there you go. 1-844 I Doubt It. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Wes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Recovering from Religion, and I've been on their podcast many times, RFRX.
Nice.
And Dr. Ray, of course, the founder and president,
he
has spoken at many of my conferences.
Nice.
And he has such excellent books that he's written, The God Virus and Sex and God. Very knowledgeable person. So I love him. He's great.
Has he talked to you about the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster?
Yes. He's so funny.
He said a prayer on my podcast. It was fantastic.
Oh my goodness. I think he's done that on our show, possibly.
So good. We wore past the straighters.
Oh, good.
Yeah. As you should, right?
as
Okay.
you should.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Stacey. My
Don't
bad.
worry. No, I was just going to say that I'm actually reading his book, The God Virus, right now. And I love
Nice.
the connection he's made with viruses and just how he's articulated that and religion. And after I'm done, I told my husband, you have to read this book because my husband is all about viruses and like how they're created. And I'm like, he's going to really love the way this book is written. So
Yeah, Christianity really seems to me like zombies. I mean, they're bent on replicating, but
Seriously.
they're not thinking. They're not using their brain. They're just trying to get more and more, trying to expand the kingdom, but don't think about it too closely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also wanted to know, you have, before we're done, if you're able to tell us about, you have a really amazing project.
Ooh.
I do. Thank you.
So exciting.
We got so many cool things on the go.
I know.
So I've been collaborating with some American colleagues about potentially opening up a recovery center in the United States for people who are leaving high demand, coercive, religious or spiritual groups. And the idea is it would be a secular center. And, we're hoping to have programs and therapists and some people might just need to come for a week. And some people might need to come for a couple of months or longer because it's different. If you are leaving the pastorate, but you have, basic skills and stuff like that, you don't need quite as much help as someone who has fled in the middle of the night from a cult compound that they were raised on from the time they were a baby. Those people need a lot of support and a lot of, they might need a police escort. They're going to need clothing. They're going to need to learn how to use a computer and a bank account.
Yeah.
So this is a very new idea we've been working on for the past year. And in April, we've decided that we will be meeting in LA, in Los Angeles. I'm so excited. And the Center for Inquiry West, which is in LA, they have graciously told us that we can meet in the Carl Sagan Theater.
Oh my goodness.
I'm very excited. So
what a privilege. That's amazing.
Know about that. I know. It's I can't believe it's happening. So it's really, we're just kind of getting the ball rolling. So we're inviting people. People can come join us in person or they can join us on Zoom. And just to kind of start talking about what this might look like. And we're strategizing, we're brainstorming together. That'll be in April.
That's amazing.
Oh, that is so fantastic.
Thanks for your badassness.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yeah.
Is that a word they use in Canada? I don't know.
Yes.
And that'll be my next one because I am in Canada. Once I see how we're able to get it up and running in the States, I'd like to be able to do the same thing in Canada. And something else I'm working on in Canada, in British Columbia, is trying to influence our government so that they will start allowing humanists to become officiants at weddings because they're allowed to do it in Ontario. We're not allowed to do it in BC. So I'm working behind the scenes trying to push that.
That's
through.
weird.
Oh my gosh.
I want to say thank you to Dan over there. We are the On Zombies.
Yes, thank you, Dan.
We appreciate that donation.
Yes.
The advocacy is definitely needed, and that's great that you're taking over that, or undertaking that. Undertaking. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, and if you were to open one in Canada, would you open it in
near my house?
Yeah. Well, because Janice and I live like really close to each other.
Oh wow.
We could probably just wave to each other.
Yeah. So
are you in the other room?
Well, we just had dinner with each other a few weeks ago, which
nice.
was wonderful. I'm so lucky to have her so close, and so thank you. But keep me posted if there's a Canadian one because I would love to help in any way that I could. So. Yeah.
And people can reach out to me. They can drop me a line through my website, through divorcing-religion.com, if they are interested in the project that we're doing, or they can hit me up on Twitter at Divorce Religion or at Wise Councellor. And Wise Councellor has 2 L's because it's the Canadian way.
Yes.
Oh, God.
I
mean, you have loonies and toonies for money, so what
right.
else can we expect? Counselor with 2 L's. God, I can't be at the show anymore.
I love it.
Cheeky.
So
Cheeky.
yes. Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, do you have any final words that you want to say?
Any final words?
No, like for the show. We're at our hour. That's done. Final thoughts.
I love it.
Let's see. I would say be compassionate to yourself. Be kind to yourself as you're walking through this process of deconstruction or deconversion. Allow yourself to become curious about everything. Let's swap out judgment for curiosity and just allow ourselves to get curious. It really is a great big world full of wonderful people and exciting things to try out. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Aw, thanks, Janice. You already told us where we can find you online. So everyone follow her, connect with her. She's amazing. Baphometal, you are a wonderful co-host. So where can people find you?
Ooh, shameless plug time. I am a co-host. My friend and I, we host the Burning Eden podcast.
Yeah.
You'll find the link in the description if Wes has changed it already. If not, just search the Burning Eden podcast. Think of the Garden of Eden, but on fire. And so there's a lot of adult humor, blasphemy, but we do touch on very serious topics like deconstruction and religious trauma. We always interview somebody and learn about their personal stories and how they became atheists. So it's very, very fun and educational. So you can find it on YouTube. You can also find it as an audio-only podcast on any of the podcast platforms that you use. Thank you for having me. Yeah. And we would love to have you, Janice. I think you would be amazing.
I think we'd have fun.
Yes. And people can also follow you on TikTok. Don't forget.
Baphometal. If you search Baphometal, it's a trash application. If you have it, what's another piece of trash? Just find me and follow Baphometal.
Yes. Perfect. And you can just follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on TikTok, the trash.
Yeah. I actually found you on TikTok first.
Yes, you did.
I found Stacy on TikTok first, and then I found this is cool. Yeah. Look at her go.
See, you don't find all trash on there. I'm not.
No, you are amazing.
Oh, stop. Thank you. Did you want to take us out with a couple of little announcements before we end?
We want to say thanks to our patrons from patreon.com. Thank you, Ryan, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, as in Delta, Michael Weissman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, I think that's an I, Sonny Shell, Aaron Colson, and Phil Calderon. Thank you so much. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your mom, tell your neighbor, tell your pastor. Come over here to Skeptic Haven and have some fun with us. And don't forget to tune into our other shows, such as The Sunny Spot, The Bible Says What?, The Global Atheist, and Women Atheists Unload. And remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Ring my bell. Right?
Yes.
And you'll get a notification. Yes. It's been a pleasure, guys.
Thank you so much, Janice. And thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Till next time.
Bye.